Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's invigorating to be here on Governor Pence's maiden State of the State voyage. First of all, I want to congratulate Governor Pence on a speech very well delivered. He built a reputation, I know, as an effective speaker in Washington. The folks of Indiana have not gotten to see that as much, and I think we learned this evening that he's certainly capable of delivering a message with competence and with clarity, and I want to thank him for that. I also want to thank Governor Pence for listening to some things. There's a number of points that he brought out that House Democrats and Senate Democrats have championed for quite some time. I'll point out a few. Transparency in our state's economic development operations. That's very important, so we understand the tough choices we have to make about jobs going ahead. We've been talking about the veterans' unemployment rate being a state and national disgrace for some time. He mentioned that. That's very important. He acknowledged that 1 out of every 5 Indiana children lives in poverty. We have different approaches to how to solve that, but I'm very grateful that he brought that out. And he also started talking in a serious way about getting kids off to a good start in life with preschool and ways to help bring kids along as soon as they're ready to begin learning, and I think that was good too. Now let's address directly the 2 very key points, I think, to his speech. The first one, which I know you want to hear about, is the tax cut proposal, and the second one is the expansion of vouchers and some of the recent changes. With tax cuts, we're not the ones that have to tell them no. We are ready to listen. We are ready to work with him to look at those things that are truly going to benefit the middle class. Now, having said that, Governor Pence has a case to make. He has a case to make that if you make these changes in Indiana's tax code, is that truly going to empower the middle class in a way that grows jobs for Indiana? I think we need to listen. I think we need to have open ears and open minds. But at the same time, we also have to be mindful of the fact that the middle class is facing a lot of different pressures, not just in taxes. They're facing pressures in paying for education and garnering new skills. They're facing pressures in health care. They're facing pressures in making sure that their streets stay safe. So that's very, very important that he remain mindful of that. Second of all, one thing I have to confess does give Democrats some concern, and that is the incongruity between the expansion of some of the recent changes which have not been evaluated, not been tested, plunging the state headlong into an expansion of things like vouchers, market Wall Street style competition among schools when really people are expecting safer schools and more cooperation, and also understanding that the people of Indiana just sent a message with the election of Democrat Glenda Ritz that they want the state to go slow in enacting further changes. They want traditional public schools to be reinforced and to be put in a position where they can adapt to some of the recent changes that former Superintendent Bennett put forward. So that's what I wanted to remark on. We have some good things. We have something that we're going to have to wait and see, but we're willing to see if we can work together. We have something that's clearly a point of disagreement, and we hope that we would advise him not to take the advice of some of the more extreme voices here inside the State House and the General Assembly about what's best for our classrooms.
Thank you, Scott, and I agree with your comments. I too want to congratulate Governor Pence. Governor Pence was my congressman for many years, and I've heard him give a number of speeches, and I think he did his usual good job this evening, and I congratulate him on giving his first speech. I too was glad to hear him embrace many of the ideas that we've talked about as Democrats over the years. I think our caucus has had a veterans preference bill for years now, so I'm glad to see that he embraces that idea and will move forward with it. I thought that early on in his speech, in spite of everything else that he had to say, he really hit the nail on the head when he said that 250,000 Hoosiers are out of work and nearly 1 million Hoosiers lack the skills they need to succeed in today's marketplace. And I think what I was looking for in this speech was exactly what are going to be the details on reaching those problems that we have as Hoosiers. Because in spite of everything else that was said, what I hear from my constituents and from the people that I come in contact with daily is, what are you going to do to create jobs? And the biggest problem that I've heard from business has been the lack of work skills. the skills gap for our workers. And while I applaud many of the ideas that the governor had in his speech, I do have to say that I'm very concerned that we didn't hear specifics as to how are we going to really bridge that skill gap. And in all due respect to the governor, his idea of $18 million to do that, I don't think it's going to get the job done. I think I was hoping for a little bit more of a bolder approach in terms of ideas and resources to really empower our workers to bridge that skill gap. But time will tell, and perhaps we'll see more details and more thoughts on this. Overall, though, I thought the governor did a good job. Concerned about, he talked about the increase in funding for public education. Well, I think all of us agree that public education is important, and we were very disappointed when there were the cuts to public education over the last 2 years. When you look behind, though, what's proposed in terms of increasing funding for public education, it does not restore the cuts that were made over the last 2 years. It doesn't get them back to what we funded in the budget 2 years ago. So, you know, I'd hoped that there would be more support for public education there. I also would take exception with that part of the governor's speech where he talked about the obligation of the state of Indiana to provide world-class education for children. We certainly agree with that. But when you look at the Constitution of the state of Indiana, it talks about providing that within the realm of the public schools, or the common schools, schools that do not charge tuition and accept all students. So again, a little bit disappointed to see that he doubled down, if you would like to use that term, as far as some of the things that have happened in the last several years on the so-called school reforms. I think that the lesson of this last election was that the people of the state of Indiana would like us to slow down and take an opportunity to analyze what's been done. Has it been good for public education? Has it been good for children? And then go forward. So I would hope that maybe the governor would rethink that particular part of his speech. But overall, I think it was a good speech. I think there were many things in there that we can work with. For example, I told the governor last week, absolutely agree with his idea of an increase in funding for, or an increase in vocational training and programs for both students and current workers to get them those skills. But I think we really have to get serious about that commitment, and I didn't see that in this speech tonight.